looks like Eric is ready to go. So while you're eating, hopefully you'll be able to listen in. I don't think he has any slides. Eric Steele, who's the Plone release manager. So a lot of you already know him, but he's going to be speaking to us today on the state of Plone.
Hard to believe, but Internet Explorer had trouble rendering real web pages. And Firefox's version number was 1/35 of what it is today. 10 years later, in 2013, Plone covers some 400,000 lines of code, which is a lot. We have a community that spans the globe, and it's growing every year. So about 2 years ago, I got this email from one of a longtime developer of Plone, a really core person, and he said, people seem to be moving on, and I'm worried about it. And he said, the names I've been seeing on the mailing list for years and years are disappearing. And he said, how should I feel? And God, that was depressing. And because I'd noticed somewhat of the same thing. And it really got me thinking about it. And I started looking around. And there's this thing called generational relay. There's this whole wealth of open source research that's been done. And it was really fascinating to me. There's this concept called generational relay. And it's common across all long-running projects. It's basically that over time, people leave. And that's as simple as that. But they found that it can range anywhere from 3 to 7 years. Debian seems to be on the long end of things. They keep their developers around for 7 years. And we've been pretty good about that. It seems to be about 3 to 5. But what we're entering right now is really the second and third generations of Plone developers. And it's an exciting time. I know it sounds depressing, but it's actually a really cool thing. When you look at what's been going on with Plone, in the last 12 months, we've had the number of active contributors to Plone Core has gone up 16%. So the losses we've seen have actually been replaced by a larger number of people. And what's happening is we are losing the very big names, and we're gaining a lot of smaller names. And as these people grow with Plone, they're starting to gain more traction and gain control over more of the code. And so we've gone from kind of these monolithic developers who are well-versed in a lot of things and getting a lot more specialists. And that actually works out well for us. We're getting a lot more overlap, and we're getting a lot more backup of the development practices. So right now, the community is actually larger and more diverse than it's ever been. At the Plone conference this year, we had 27 different countries represented. And we're starting, traditionally Plone was a European and American piece of software. It's largely where most of the main developers came from. We're really starting to see expansion in South America, where the Plone conference is happening this year. We're seeing folks from India. We have 2 here today, I believe, which is fantastic. Japan is really picking up steam, and we've seen some startup in Africa. Excuse me. So Plone has always been about the community, and it's always been hard to explain to outsiders, but I think most people here have touched on it. The feeling that we are part of something bigger, we are part of a family. We come back year after year to see each other, and even people who have moved on to new projects come back to see us and help out. And it's really great to see. At the Arnhem conference this year, one of my friends I used to work with at Penn State lives in Arnhem in the Netherlands, and she came out to join us one night for drinks, and she sat down with people from 6 or 7 different countries and talked about things ranging from the Falkland Islands to Franco. Yes. Political things, scientific issues, any number of things, and she found it absolutely fascinating. She said she never had such a good evening with people she had no idea who they were. And she sent me a text on the way home that night, and she said, I have no idea what you people do, but I want to be a part of it. And that's really the essence of our community is a lot of us don't know what we do, but we really want to be a part of it. So part of this change that we've been seeing is one of the main people that's been moving on is Alex Leamy, one of the co-founders of Plone. And he used to be the one that would stand up here and talk about how things are going. And he's very busy in his new life at Mozilla, and that's fine. But it raises the question of who's running this thing. And I know I felt a little scared about that. No, don't point at me. And a lot of us have been talking about it, and we've lost all this leadership. Who's in charge here? And then we sit down and we think, oh wait, it's us, because we're now the new generation of leadership here. This is really now becoming a community-owned project. Dries Buytaerts from Drupal, who's the founder of both Drupal and the company that owns Drupal, put out a blog post a few months ago that was basically, here's our organizational chart. Here's the number of teams we've created, and here's me at the head. I am the final decision maker on everything. And Steve McMahon pointed out that ours is pretty much flipped now. We have a number of teams who are actively doing things, and it has me on the bottom as the person responsible to each of those teams. And he's right, because my job isn't to make the decisions. My job is to make it easier for everybody else to make those decisions for us. And make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing and that they have the ability to do that. I find when I talk to people at these events, people like to complain to me about things as if I have the power to change everything. And usually the two things I'm thinking are, why don't you do this yourself? And how can I get this person to do it himself? So it makes me feel like kind of an asshole. So when I look at that org chart now, I think instead of being the head, I'm Plone's asshole. So we no longer have that pointy-haired guy with an eyebrow ring standing up here telling us what we should be doing this year. And it's a little scary. It's a bit of a broken window problem. So there's a broken window theory that was put out back in 1982 that says basically the biggest indicator of whether a building was going to become vandalized was a single broken window. Once that happened, people saw it was unmaintained and would start to throw more rocks, break more things, do graffiti, and that sense of abandonment really becomes a reality. And so, God, I'm sorry, I'm wildly vacillating between yay and oh my God. But hopefully by the end this sounds a lot more positive. As I said, we're at a crossroads. We have this broken window problem of not, I'm trying to find the quote from Gary this morning, but it was basically, Curtis, I'm sorry. He said, when you don't communicate why you're doing something, it feels like it's being done to them instead of for them. And so part of our current issue is that we're not communicating with the rest of you. There is a core of people that are very excited about what we're doing. There's a core of people who are very adamant that we're going to continue doing what we're doing. But we need to make sure that we get that out to you in a way that makes it easier for you to know what we're doing, makes it easier for you to participate, and it makes it easier for you to turn around and make sure that your customers, your clients know that we know what we're doing. So there was an article that was interesting about the Diaspora, which was a open source project meant open source social network. And Glenn Moody wrote this article called Learning from Diaspora. And he says, the open source world does many things brilliantly, but one thing it does badly is planning for leadership succession. And we found that out ourselves. So what we're doing right now is really trying to cultivate that next generation of Plone's leadership. We are building a team structure that makes sense. We're letting people do what they love to do. And we're finding people to lead those teams to make sure that that can continue to happen. So what we're doing is we're going out and looking for those people that really know how to inspire others and making sure that they have the tools to help other people help Plone. This past year, we had a new board come in, and one of the big things that they did was basically the next decade manifesto from a number of them. And part of that was looking at what's going on right now, what are our problems, and what do we do to fix this. So they came up with a number of things. It was accountability. We make sure that everybody is accountable for what we're supposed to be doing. So if a team leader is not doing what he or she needs to be doing, they get removed. We find somebody new that can do what they need to do. And it's that no team operates on an island. So we're starting to make sure that we communicate all our team needs and get that to happen. And communication needs to happen. As I said, we've done a bad job of getting information out to the rest of you about what's happening. So we're going to start to work on better communication from the board, myself, and all our teams so that you know what's going on. And that's not just news releases. That's things like mailing list posts. That's things like we really need to get back to blogging. Twitter has killed our blogging. I no longer have to think more than a sentence, and it kind of hurts. As Grace said this morning, we help get other stories out there, and it's really now time to put our story out there and make sure that everybody knows what we're doing. And the foundation board has really started to put an emphasis on local communities. We have a number of regional advisors who are helping us figure out what can we do to make sure that Plone is well represented and you are well represented with Plone. And one of the other thing that we're really focusing on is sprints. Sprints have long been pretty much the lifeblood of Plone. This is where most of the work happens. This is where we get together, put our heads together, and figure out what we're doing. The sprints we had just before this symposium were extremely useful. We did a lot less coding than I thought we would, but we did a lot of talking and really came up with a lot of great ideas. And it allows us to transfer our culture. So when we have that generational relay, we're getting the new people and the old people together to make sure that our traditions continue, our vision for the project continues. And it also acts as our crazy filter. We've long said that we want to meet you before we give you any sort of responsibility, and having you come to an event where we can see you face to face and make sure you're not a raving lunatic is a really big plus. So to help that out, the foundation board has put out money for strategic sprinting, which means that if a sprint is focused on something that is of great importance to the continuation of Plone, the code, or the community, it gets money. If it is in a traditionally underserved geographic region, it gets money. If someone is an up-and-coming developer or contributor, they get money to get to a sprint. If you have a number of uninitiated sprinters, we get some veterans there to make sure that you know what's going on. So I've been lucky. I've gotten to go to both South Africa and Barcelona this year, which was fantastic. So I'm basically now the smiling face of Plone. And it's awkward because I've had to be a bit of a cheerleader, which is really awkward for the people I'm working with because they have no idea how to tell when I'm both either happy or upset. But so the Cape Town sprint was great. We had a number of people who had never been to a Plone event down there, and they were excited to see us. David and I both went down, and we were able to get 6 or 8 new people involved in contributing to Plone Core. My favorite was a guy who didn't think he could do much, so we handed in some of our test cases and asked him to start translating that to the new framework we're using. And he said, oh, okay, fine, and started working on it. At the end of day one, he said, yeah, I've got it down. I just need a few more hours to get through this. And At the end of the day 2, he said, I hate this, I never want to do this again. When I came in the morning of day 3, he was already halfway through it again and was determined to finish it. He said, I will get this done before the end of today. And so we hooked him. It's great to see. Sorry. Let me turn my rotation lock on so I don't have to keep doing that. We went to Barcelona, which was a testing sprint. The company Iskra sponsored most of it, which was really, really fun. We got a number of people involved in writing new tests, setting up our new testing framework. We had, at the final dinner, one of the people from the company said, turned to her boss and she said, we've been doing Plone for almost 10 years and this is the first time we've done this. Why? She says, what the hell have we been doing for all these years? And this money that we're giving out is really helping to kind of push people over the edge to say, oh wait, I can host this sprint because I have some backing from the foundation to do it. So we're really focusing right now on rebuilding our team infrastructure. We have 12 teams, I think, last I counted. I've been doing mind maps all week, trying to figure out what everybody's doing and where their needs are. And it's interesting to see that there's a lot of connections between them that we never really noticed. That the testing team needs a sysadmin, so we need to talk to the infrastructure team. The internationalization team needs reports weekly or monthly to see how they're doing, which languages need the most work, so they need to talk to the testing team. The documentation team needs editors, so we need to talk to the communications team. Everybody needs the communications team right now because we're not communicating. And so we're starting to get that going. I have to thank Rose Bryan over here. Wave, thank you. If you've been seeing articles recently about some of the stuff we've been doing, it's mostly because of Rose. We've been just kind of pointing her at people and saying, go talk to this person, they're interesting, their story needs to be heard. And she's just been cranking out article after article. My favorite one is, do we have anyone from UCLA, the theme editor group? Okay. Plone 4.3 introduced the theme editor, which is a way to work with Diazo through the web. And it was okay. It wasn't bad. But there was a group of designers at UCLA that sat down and said, we need to work with this Plone thing, and oh, it looks horrible to work with. And they found this project that was kind of sitting off to the side that would look like it probably had some promise. And so they got together and started doing focused user testing on it. And basically, they and Martin Espelli just went back and forth and said, they'd say, this, I don't understand this. He'd say, okay, it's fixed. Why do I need to do this? Oh, okay, I'll change that. And it went back and forth, and it is now a absolutely amazing feature. If you haven't tried it yet, I really hope you do. It allows you to take a web page, a static web page, and your Plone site, and just say click, 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 put this content here, stick this logo here. And I think it's game-changing for us, absolutely. But yes, so we're resetting the communications team. We need people who would like to write articles, interview people, and help us start to get the word out about Plone. What's that, Rose? Yes, please talk to Rose. So we're going to be using that communications team with all of our teams to get out monthly reports of what's going on, where our needs are, so that if we can convince you to help, we can bring you in and you know where to go. We have the security team is continuing doing what we can't tell you they're doing, but largely it is testing the heck out of Plone to make sure that you're not vulnerable, and making sure that you get patched before anybody else finds out about it. We have a UI team, which is one of my favorites. Nathan Van Giem over here has been doing a fantastic job of running that. What they're doing is reviewing any new features that come into Plone and making sure they're sane, and not confusing. And they're taking a look at existing features. So Plone 4.3, there's a complete UI revamp of content rules because it was fantastic, but nobody knew how to use it. So now it's a lot more intuitive, and we're basically refining things that we forgot we had. And yeah. Documentation team is coming back. Miko, the crazy Finn, crazy katana-wielding Finn, is running that now. We finally got him to stop complaining and start doing things, although he still hasn't stopped complaining. But they're busy gathering together all the documentation into one place. If you go to developer.plone.org, it is much better and it is much improved. And there's a number of other teams. I'm happy to talk to anybody about those, but yeah, we'll get to those another time. One of the things I'm most concerned about right now is that really, at this moment, the developers are running the show. There was a screencast put out a few weeks ago by Osco, and I really hate to call him out on it because it was the coolest thing I've seen in a long time. But he's basically created a automated screencast tool where he gave a script to a program he wrote, and it actually literally brought up a web page, clicked around on it, and spoke the lines as it was doing it. And it was saying, okay, now I'm going to go to the add menu. And I was like, holy cow, that is awesome. I hate you for making that because I wanted to do it myself. And I love it, but at the same time, it is a perfect example of the sort of developer-driven culture that we have right now, because he's basically created a screencast generation framework instead of creating a screencast. And we need the non-developer people to come back and help us make things sane again. Because if we let the developers run the show, we're going to go off in that direction. And really, over the years, I think we've placed a little too much emphasis on the core developer. And I think we need to really look at the contributors. And that is everybody contributing to Plone, because all of that matters, not just the code. Now, in the worst segue ever, I'm going to talk about the code. So, all right, in the last year, we've had two minor Plone releases, Plone 4.2 and Plone 4.3. 4.2 included new collections, HTML5 compliance, new search results page, and Python 2.7 support. Pretty sure most of you are on that by now, I hope. Plone 4.3 just came out. We added Dexterity is available to use. So we're getting that out there so that you can try it out now, fall in love with it, and tell us where the holes are. It includes a theme editor I spoke about, which is, I think, it's going to become the way to theme Plone. I think it's going to become one of the easiest ways to theme any CMS. We're adding better syndication, so we're fixing up the RSS feeds that we used to have, and make them actually work. And it has an upgrade of TinyMCE to 3.4, which fixes a number of issues we've been having for a while. And we're starting to get rid of code, so we're removing Kupu and KSS because they aren't used. Last year, some idiot stood up here and said, hey, we're going to have Plone 5 within the next year. And that was me. And I've been asked, hey, where is it? And I said, I don't know. We're working on it. But I think this year I've spoken to some people, and last year my problem was internal marketing. I came out and said, let's do it. And I didn't give any good reasons why. And people said, no, we're fine. So this year we're starting an actual campaign around it. We are reworking the way we want to do things. Plone 5, we set up a number of themes. Basically, core is going to set best practices again. For the longest time, it used to be, if you want to learn how to do something, you look at Plone core. Well, right now, Plone core has 5 different ways to do anything you want to do. So it's both a good and horrible way to find out what you need to do, and it's kind of a random choice as to whether you get the right one. We're going to make sure that Plone is doing it the right way out of the box. We're cleaning up. and moving on from things. So dexterity is going to become the default content type for everything. We're deprecating archetypes. You can still use it, but we don't want to maintain it forever. And so really, what you're getting is optimized, leaner code. It means it's going to be a lot easier for you to do customizations and a much faster experience for your end users. We're going to start modernizing our CSS and JavaScript because we're right now fairly antiquated, and people like Rock don't want to work with it right now. So we're going to make it easier to bring in actual JavaScript developers to help us out instead of us trying to use Plone developers to learn JavaScript. And we want to make it faster for you to spin up new people, new designers, new developers, new integrators. So what does that mean? First of all, we're bringing in Plone app content types, which is the dexterity replacement for archetypes. Basically all the content types that you knew and loved, but backed by the more efficient dexterity engine. And we are working on automated migration for stock content. We will have procedures available for you for your customized things, but the basic types should come over just fine. Plone app events is finally showing up. This is the recurring date support we've been wanting forever. It's got also brings in time zone support and a much better date input widget. This one is worth 12 bottles of whiskey by the end of the weekend. Tiny MCE 4.0 is much better than the previous version. It's cleaner, it's faster, and much simpler. During the sprint on 2 days ago, we bet Nathan 12 bottles of whiskey that he couldn't get it finished by the end of the week, and I think he's done it within 2, so. Sort of? It's close enough for me, I don't know. 6 bottles in, okay, yeah. All right. So yeah, and what this really is going to give us is a clear upgrade path. Right now, the integration we have with Plone, it prevents us from moving forward in a reasonable clip, which is why it took until Plone 4.3 to get you updated to the current version. And moving on to the 4.0 branch and redoing the way we work with it is going to actually allow us to keep up, hopefully infinitely. We are planning on a new theme. It will be just as bland as the current one. Bland but flashy, because we want to be able to let you use it out of the box, slap a logo on it, and call it a new site. But it's going to be diazo based. We're buying into that all the way through the stack. Out of the box, we expect it to be responsive and accessible. We have an accessibility team now led by Paul, who is adamant that, well, we are WCAG compliant now.
Give or take 1 or 2 things that we will get fixed on Friday.
Okay, we are WCAG compliant as of Friday this week. And we're also looking at ATAG, the authoring tool accessibility guidelines, and aiming to be the first open source CMS to implement those, which will be great. Using CSS icons for faster rendering. We're looking at less CSS and JavaScript files because we know how hard it is to manage 14 core CSS files. And we want a better grid system because the Deco.js one just didn't work out. Yes. We're in the process of modernizing all our form widgets. So we're using real JavaScript to run these things instead of the Model T version we used to have. Nathan is leading that effort, and it's looking very good. We're going to be using Chameleon, which basically gives us 15 to 20% faster rendering times for pages. Plone app toolbar is coming in, which is basically the diazo integration without the editing interface headache. So we're basically separating the editing interface from the rest of Plone. We are working on deprecating portal skins. We'll leave it around because we know everybody likes to use it. But Plone Core won't be. Basically, there's a lot of things in there right now that aren't tested, which keeps me up at night. And basically, it allows us to clear up some old tickets that nobody wants to touch. We're going to standardize everything and make them testable. And it's really all the basic CMS functions that we've been ignoring for years. So copy, paste, delete, which are pretty vital to what we do. And we're starting to look at different development paradigms for CSS and JavaScript. We're looking at things like the JavaScript we're looking at is based on Plone.mockup, which Rock is working on. Oh, there he is. Sorry, right in front of me. Basically, we're getting dependency management for JavaScript, testing for JavaScript, and yeah. And we're getting Plone.api, which is basically a developer and integrator-friendly API. It makes it much easier for you to know how to do anything. It's all extremely well documented and allows us to clean up things on the back end without breaking your sites, which everybody loves. We're working on consolidating some of our core packages, which none of you care about, but for me, it's a wonderful thing because we have currently 216 packages in Plone Core, and I don't have to release all of them every time, but it's still enough to make me hate my life. I have here a note that says the number of packages is too damn high. So, what's that?
Darn tootin'.
Darn tootin', okay. I don't have my gloves. So, but basically, we wanted to come up with a set of things that were primarily achievable. We think we can do this within the next year. We think we can focus our developers on handling this and this alone so that we can move forward and get this out because I think it's going to be a big step forward for Plone and it really allows us to capture a lot of the rest of you into the process. We need developer help, we need documentation help, we need communications help more than anything. We need testing help and that's what we're asking from you. So how do we make this happen? Like I said, we're going to be doing a lot of internal marketing. I'm not the one to do it because I'm still speaking developer speak. We have Liz and Gabrielle sat down yesterday and did some fantastic work coming up with actual marketing points for everything we want to do with Plone 5. And we're going to start pushing those both to the people developing it and the people consuming it so that everybody's on the same page and ready to go. We're really looking at company support. So right now we are going out and saying, here's the list of things we want to accomplish. What can your company do to help? We've got, right now, NetSite has agreed to start looking at login and registration. 6 Feet Up has offered us their QA team, which is extremely big. My company, AMP, is going to be working on the Portal Skins deprecation and reworking the way that all those scripts work. And Wildcard is basically letting us use Nate to work on the folder contents, right? Yes, and yes, most importantly, they're providing legal support to rewrite our contributor agreement, which is, if you've ever looked at it, is completely incomprehensible. So yeah, we're asking companies to step up and make something in Plone happen. If you have the need, or if you have the time and developer time to provide help, come talk to me and I'll happily help match you up with the project. We're also doing individual fundraising. Rock this year basically put out a call for 2 weeks of his time to work on Toolbar and some of the other projects he's been involved with. And the community and companies stepped up to help pay for his time to actually work on that. And I would love to see more of that happen. So the final plea is, and I think I'm almost out of time. So there's a great book I read this year called Open Advice. It was put out by a number of major open source projects, a lot of people who've been around for years. There's a woman, Lydia Pincher, from the KDE project, and her chapter is titled Being Allowed to Do Awesome. And she has this line in there, and it's a little bit hard to parse, but I'll go through it twice. It says, the insight that most people in open source didn't get allowed to work on stuff, but just didn't run fast enough at the right moment seems to be rare. I'm going to read that again. The insight that most people in open source didn't get allowed to work on stuff, but just didn't run fast enough at the right moment seems to be rare. So it's really that potential contributors often think that they're not allowed to contribute, and the rest of us who are involved never think to ask. So I'm asking. We need your help getting all this together in the next year so that we can make Plone more awesome for us and for you. And I'm here. Please come talk to me. I will happily get you involved wherever you belong, and we'll make this happen together. Thanks.